Aloha Aina, and welcome to Voices of Truth, one-on-one with Hawaii's future. Brought to you by the Kiwani Foundation. I'm Ehukekahu Cardwell, and here we are today in Thomas Square in Honolulu for Kala Hoihoiea 2006 Hawaiian Restoration Day. And we have with us on the show today none other than Kaleikoa Kaeo. Kaleikoa, aloha.
Aloha.
Nice to have you on the show. Welcome. Come on and stand right here with me. And, you're somebody who I've always been impressed with because, and I'm going to use these words, you may not like them, but I'm going to use them anyway. You are what I call one of our Hawaiian philosophers.
Oh.
The words that come out of your mouth are phenomenal. The thoughts you have, the mana'o, just blows me away sometimes.
Just a student of many people.
Well, yeah, but that's the key. You've been a student, and you've had your ears open and listened and learned from many people. And I know you have some role models. And one of the things you were saying to me earlier was about the land. So let's start right there. What's important about the people and their relationship to the land?
Yeah, I think that is the foundation of really what this is all about. And I think many times people speak about, it's about the Hawaiians getting their land back. And what I've been taught and learned, of course, is not so much about the Hawaiians getting their land back, but really about Hawaiians returning to the land as a foundation. So what's the deal if we get back 1 million acres, 2 million acres, 4 million acres of land, and we use the land or abuse the land or mistreat the land in the same way that's been mistreated by, through our own indoctrination and subjugation and colonization, that we got to be aware of. That it's really not about getting the land back, but it's really about our essence of who we are as a people that needs to be restored, renewed, and reestablished on this land. And so for me, when we talk about Hawaiian sovereignty, I generally like to talk more about the Hawaiian focus. I think there's a lot of scholarship regarding the sovereignty, and I think it's been very much established that the Hawaiian Kingdom, of course, has been occupied since 1893, and actually prior to that. But what has happened from that period of time, people are worried about Hawaiians being put back on a reservation. And usually what they talk about is a reservation, a space of land, and they fail to realize that we've been living on a reservation in our minds.
Yes.
The boundaries, the chains on our brains have already been set, that we must take off those shackles, in a sense, and not worry about, as I like to say, it's not a fight of getting a longer leash. It's really about breaking that leash off our neck so we can actually roam free in our land. And in order to do that, that means that we have to really try to reestablish, renew, refertilize the essence of who we are as a people. What is that connection to the land? How do we relate to this land? And that has to be done in a way in which we use, of course, the knowledge from our kupuna to re-blossom, and then that has to be passed on to the next generation. And you already see it happening. I think you see so many of the young, I myself, I was very, very fortunate as a young person to be around some real important people in our modern history. Listen to them talk, be taken with them. And so, and whatever I knew and I gained, when I look at I have 3 children. Those 3 children are already, that much further ahead in their own promotion of being Hawaiian. And so, and you can see it amongst many, many families in Hawaii. So when we talk about, what's going on, why is La Ho'iho'i'a such an important day? It's not just restoration. It's not just restoration of the governmental structure, the governance of who we are. It's really, fundamentally, it's about the restoration of who we are as a people. And I'm going to show that quote, of course, from Kamehameha III. He pronounces on the restoration in 1843, Uamau ke'ea o ka'aina I kapono.
Which means what?
Yeah, uamau, continue on forever. Ke'ea, that which gives you life, the sovereignty, the independence. The key here, o ka'aina, of the land, that which we stand on, that which we feed from. So it's not saying the sovereignty of the king. It doesn't say the sovereignty of the government. It doesn't say the sovereignty of a legislature, the sovereignty of a particular constitution, but ke'ea o ka'aina I kapono, in being righteous in balance. Yeah. And so it's very clear. In order for us to be pono, what has to be reestablished, of course, is the aina, the pono, in the aina. And so, and to me, that's the lesson that comes from our kupuna. And there's many. Of course, we know with the great hymn, I like to call Kaulana Napua.
Yep.
There's a line, Yeah, ua lava mako ika pohaku, ika ai kamahau o ka aina. Yeah, we'll be satisfied with the pohaku. Yeah, the rocks, the land. Ka ai kamahau o ka aina. Yeah, the wondrous food of the land. And the line before that actually says, aole mako wa e pulima. No, aole mako wa e mina mina ika puukala o ke opuni. That we won't be, so attached and worrying about the money.
Yes.
Hence the kaka bill. We're going to lose 67. Oh,
Yeah.
panic, panic, panic. No, it's not about the money. No worry about that. What we need to focus upon is the land. And it's not just the land, but how we relate and stand on the land. And one of the things I always teach when I as an educator is that whenever you walk as a Hawaiian, wherever you walk upon these lands in Hawaii, we must remember that within these lands, literally, the bones of our ancestors lay within these lands.
Right here.
Right here. So
everywhere.
we walk upon
Yes.
the bones of our ancestors.
Yes.
We're never alone. We never
Yes.
alienated from them. We never separated from them. But
Never-
we've been taught.
never detached,
We've been
yeah.
taught
Yeah.
in this educational system of assimilation
Yes.
to not see the land as something that's connected to you. And in fact, I always use this other quote from Walter Reedy. When Walter Reedy and Walter Reedy and Richard Sawyer were, were occupying Kaho'olawe. And, he writes his journal. He writes a very important, a very simple line. And he writes, Walter Reedy writes, he found out the land, he found out the dirt wasn't dirty. It was just brown.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, wow, how important and I use a fancy anti-hegemonic statement as this kind of, because the world teaches us today, the Western world teaches us to look at dirt as something that's separate, something that's negative.
Something to stay away from.
Something to stay away
Get
from.
it off of you.
And you see, while Walter Reedy is on the island, he said,
Yeah.
it's not brown, it's not dirty, it's just brown, meaning,
Yeah.
it's not negative. In fact, it's something positive.
Well, you know what? It's a completely eye-opening statement.
Exactly.
It just
It's
opens
powerful,
your world.
simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very simple statement. But
Yeah.
you can only get to that
Yeah.
point because of being on the island
Yes.
in that situation for those days.
Yes.
And forcibly reconnecting with the Aina. And to me, that's the essence of what we gotta attach. Because once we reconnect there, the
whole world opens.
Everything else
Everything is
will
possible.
fall into place. And that's
Yes.
how I really believe.
Yeah.
And Malcolm X, again, quote another quote. Malcolm X had a statement, and I always. It's a very fundamentally regarding organizing. He says the biggest mistake is trying to organize the sleeping people.
Mm-hmm.
You have to first wake them up to the humanity, then you get action.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about organizing or reorganizing or reestablishing the nation, fundamentally what he's saying, well, it's really about our sense of seeing ourselves as humans.
Yes.
It's not seeing ourselves as strangers of who we are, as someone outside of the history, but actually seeing ourselves as being part of the history, being subjects of history and not objects of history. And so we look at Hawaiian sovereignty. Well, what is that humanity? And that's the humanity, the reconnection, the reestablishing of the relationship with the land, as seeing the land as being part of who you are. And when we pass on, we return to the Aina. And so when I look at restoration and what's happening today, that's the kind of message I always like to bring, is to kind of remember that it's just as radical, but if not more radical, to go corner off your little area and go plant your kalo in the ground and nurture that kalo and see it grow and replant the huli. Thinking reestablishment of government can be in the same way, kuleana by kuleana, ahupo'a by ahupo'a, ohana by ohana, of reestablishing that connection. I know sometimes people, they think it's too touchy-feely, but the reality of it, every word of Hawaiian you speak, every prayer you might, you speak on, this is all part of challenging assimilation. And see, in my assimilation is really the most destructive force in our people, or the main opponent of our people. Assimilation, we forget about, the Kaka Bill is an assimilation via a governmental structure.
Yes.
Right? No difference in language, no difference to religion, no difference to the philosophy, the way we walk and we see the land. This is all part of assimilation, where they want to erase, and for many of our people have already erased, sadly, that connection.
Yeah.
So how do we reestablish that? That's the main key. Not get caught up only in the political governance of what it is to be Hawaiian. The fact that I have a Hawaiian passport somehow makes me believe that I'll be able to walk around as a Hawaiian, and that not necessarily goes hand in hand. In fact, it may be important to walk around as a Hawaiian first. You have your Hawaiian passport, and And this is where some of my Hawaiian independence friends, we kind of wrestle with. And I always say I proclaim myself as being more for, not as much for Hawaiian independence as much as I'm for independent Hawaiians.
Yes.
Because they're not necessarily the same thing.
Yeah, one is from the inside, outside in, the other one's from the inside out.
Think of it now. We could reestablish a political independence right now. But if our brains and soul and minds are very dependent on the power structures that exist,
what good is it?
What good is it?
Yeah.
I think Hegel has it, the famous words. He says, the dream of a slave is not to be free, but to have a slave of his own.
Yes.
And so that's the same kind of mentality.
Yeah, pecking order.
People see our creation of our government structure so we can behave like the same kind of exploitationists and imperialists and capitalists in the rest of the Pacific.
Yeah.
Instead of seeing yourself as just being one of the people of the Pacific. I think it's a very different, and that's the kind of language I think we got to be careful. We have to not be afraid to talk about and share and speak to. And the only way I think we can jointly communicate is to have a good grounding. And what is the grounding? Well, we all, no matter what, we all are the lepo of this land. Whether you think you're high or think you're low, we all are the lepo of this land. We all eat from the lepo of this land. We all eat our akua that's grown from the lepo of this land. Our aumaku, our kinolau, all feed us. And so, if we understand that kind of cycle, fundamentally, I think it helps to promote brotherhood, sisterhood, and becomes the fun. It's kind of funny. There's walkers and talkers, I guess, in life. And what's revealing with a lot of things, just looking back at examples of when you walk into a lo'i, and you have maybe 20 people going to work in the lo'i. It doesn't really matter what they say about taro farming or how taro should be farmed. In the end, it's really only when they walk into the lo'i, into the lepo, and they start to, out the patches or plant, then you start to see really who are the workers and who are the talkers. And I think in the same way in the political realm, it's also important that we create those kinds of forums. So the politics of our people can be brought forward in that kind of forum.
Yeah,
it can be tussled with. So a lot of times people say something, but it's never challenged. And I think to be critical is very important at this time. We have to be critical of each other and not be afraid to be criticized.
Sure.
Because if what you got is real and true, it'll stand the test of time anyway.
Yeah. One of the things I hear you saying, Kaleikoa, is that speaking the language, the Hawaiian language, that's a political act.
Yeah.
Doing the hula, that's a political act.
Yeah.
Working in a taro patch, that's a political
Correct.
act.
Yeah. Because the opposite of that, of course, is they try to teach us.
Yeah.
They teach us to become servants in a economy that wants you to become this friendly native that smiles at passerbyers and the tourist bus. That's what that's the assimilation model. That's what a good Hawaiian has to be. When in reality, no. Anything that challenges that hegemony, that power structure, to me, really is beneficial. And see, we all do it in different ways. I think many of our people do it in different ways. We find our Hawaiianness in different ways, and it's a really exciting time. I got to go to a conference a couple of weeks ago, the Ahakane conference. And it was interesting because you see a lot of maybe people who maybe have not participated in the political discussions in the past because they've been kind of afraid and not knowledgeable enough. But because there were workshops perhaps on lua or workshops on hands-on training on something, that got them into at least the forum, the room, the classroom, to begin to do those things. And then, now while they're doing, they realize they start to hear and now they listen. So whatever path it is that allows the people to kind of come together and begin this discussion, we have to promote. In other words, there's no really one model.
Yeah, many models.
There's many models.
But you're also saying that it's fundamentally from the inside out, isn't it?
It is fundamentally.
It has to be.
It's the key. It has to be, because if not, it's just a shell.
Yeah.
It's just a decoration. Same thing with Hawaiian. I can speak Hawaiian words beautifully, but just because it sounds Hawaiian, really what's the foundation, not how you sound, but what are you saying? But Hawaiian, the working, the way you do it, these are all part of the pieces. But they're just empty shells. If fundamentally on the inside, it hasn't been reestablished. And I think this is basic humanity. This isn't something crucial only to Hawaiians.
Sure.
You know, actually, I'm half Irish myself. And so a lot of my inspiration also come from
Which
reading
half?
Irish. This half,
Okay, okay.
But my mom is Irish, and so you know, I read people like Bobby Sands and you know other people, and just great writers, and they talk about the same. You know, they had a strong movement with Irish language themselves, ahead of Hawaii, trying to reestablish the Irish language as not just as a official language in a sense on paper, but something that's spoken in the household every day. But you know, every other kind of aspect of their culture, they see it as being fundamental to the nationalist movement. You know, it's not separate. It's very much at the heart of the movement. Jerry Adams, for example, and these are all big-time promoters of Irish language, and so I can see again. This isn't something that's again just relative to Hawaii, but this is something that's again going back to Stephen Biko in South Africa.
Yes,
the greatest weapon of the oppressor are the minds of the oppressed.
Yes.
Their main goal is to have you erase and forget your history and your identity and sense of who you are. Because then you start to measure yourself in their eyes. And of course, whenever you measure yourself in their eyes, you always be less than, trying to become like them, instead of being really who you are. You know, that's the fundamental question.
And Kaleikoa, just so our viewers know, Steve Biko was an activist in apartheid South Africa who literally gave his life. He was murdered in prison for his freedom activities.
And he was...
But he was like you, a very sharp guy. I know he's somebody who was deeply inspired you, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. You know, he has a book. If you ever read a book called I Write What I Like, one of my favorite books I look to all the time.
Say the title again.
Yeah, I Write What I Like.
By Stephen
Biko. And there's a movie about him that was made with, what's that famous actor? It's called, shucks, I'm sorry.
It'll come to
It's
you.
about Stephen Biko. But, you know, like Mandela, in fact, many people say that he was probably more inspiring at one time and more powerful than Mandela. You know, of course, Mandela had gone into prison in the 1960s.
Sure.
In the 1970s, you know, this young student comes out of, you know, South Africa and really just, like the book says, I write what I like.
Yeah, he lit the nation on fire.
And
Absolutely.
they physically targeted him.
Yes.
And unlike Mandela, which was sent to prison for many, many years, Biko was killed.
Because he was too dangerous.
Seen as being that dangerous. Because Biko refused to say, you know, basically Biko said, by any means necessary, we're going to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And, you know, it later was killed before that. And so, but he's, you know, he's still a very big hero in Africa. And so,
Sure. So you know, you mentioned Malcolm X a few minutes ago. You know, of course, Malcolm X towards the end of his life said, you know, really, it's not a black thing, it's not a white thing, it's a human being thing. So what that means is the ideas you're talking about and the principles we see again and again and again in all different cultures amongst all different people. And they're universal principles that absolutely apply here.
Oh, correct. I mean, you see the struggles that are going on in the rest of the Pacific, you know, in Papua. You know, in what's now being annexed as called Irian Jaya. They're still struggling for survival of as a people. You know, Bougainville, Kanaki, Te Ao Maui. You know, the Tahitians right now are making a move. You know,
yes, they are.
You know, they're making a move where, you know, they're going to shake up. And so you can see whatever happens in Tahiti will definitely impact Hawaiians, you see.
The independence movement down there.
Definitely, because you see it happening over there. And the weird thing about it...
Because everybody over here is watching.
Even when I went to Aotearoa, you know, you know, it's weird because on many levels, I think people think that Hawaiians are behind in many ways of what's going on in the rest of the Pacific. But in my own experiences and discussions, it's kind of strange, but many times they see us as being the progressive ones.
Yes.
You see, and I think, you know, all the research recently has really, you know, showed that, especially research by people like, you know, of course, Keanu and other people recently showed that in regards to historical structures of governance, definitely we had our foot in the door.
Oh, sure.
So it's not really about trying to become, you know, a nation state. It's really about trying to reestablish, renew,
it's
replenish
coming
ourselves.
from it.
Oh,
yes.
So this is nothing new. We've walked that path before.
And
that's a very different approach. You know, if we've been there before, it's a lot easier to get back. Then if it's something we're trying to attain, it's something new. And so, and I think if we approach it in that way, and that's why, to me, what's so detrimental about the Kakabill is that what the Kakabill forces Hawaiians who support to do is to deny that history.
Deny who they are.
Deny what happens in 1843. Deny those treaties, the world-renowned, the exploits of people like Kaleikoa, and to say, we were just some kind of native tribe with no kind of self-governance in the past, and therefore we're looking for something new today. And to me, how horrible, if there's one thing I would ever hate to do, is to deny the honor that's due what was done by our ancestors in the past.
Absolutely.
You see, because that's really empowering to our people.
Yes.
Because now when I walk upon this aina, I walk a little more taller.
Yeah.
I walk a little more resilient. I feel more confident. Why? Because I know and I understand what they did. The activities and actions that they did was something true, something real, and something that really established what we are today and what we can be into the future. So, and this is part of the educational process. And you see a lot of it happening more and more now. You know, I remember a time when people would say the S word.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the S word. You know, not even say the word sovereignty. You know,
that S word.
The S word. You know, nowadays people talk about, you know, the occupation and the belligerent. You know, the language has totally changed.
Totally changed.
And that's because of education.
Yes.
And so, and I just, you know, I want to say also that the, you know, even with this big pro-assimilationist movement now with the U.S., you know, with the war in the Middle East, and it's very pro-U.S. military, very pro red, white, and blue. But even with that going on, with that much patriotism going on, it's astounding to say the Hawaiian patriotism is growing.
Yes.
So what is that saying? And I say, well, if that's the best they get, you know, we get them licked with what we get already. That if that's the best that they get, our patriotism will grow and get stronger and stronger. And so,
okay, Kaleikoa, I want to ask you a question, and this is one of the themes of our show, Voices of Truth. We have a lot of young people watch the show, and a lot of people out there, you know, get really inspired by the guests we have on the show. But they sit there and say, you know, boy, you know, that's great for him because he's smart, he's educated, he's been in this for a long time. But I'm just little old me. How can I do my piece? What would you say to them? What would be your message for them about how they can find their kuleana, whatever size, and get in there and do it?
I think that's the first key, like you said. Find their kuleana, because there's no one path.
Yeah.
We're not monolithic in a sense. We're all exactly, because our kupuna weren't that same way. It may be, your path may be from your history or knowledge of fishing, that you get along, now you get involved with culture resource manager of the ocean. And that's your path into understanding your kuleana. Or your path may be on the opposite end. Maybe it's farming and taro farming, or it's water rights. Whatever. Maybe your grandparent was a famous kumuhula. Maybe that's your path to become, again, because these are all key identity keys that I think help to formulate your sense of Hawaiianness first. That really, to me, is the key. Everything else will fall into place if that is formed. The thing you need to do is, like our kupuna say, you know, always trust your now. You gotta trust your now. You know, don't allow what happens here to affect really what happens here. Because we learn from our kupuna. You know, in Hawaii, we know what's right and wrong. Not from here. It's from over here. You don't get a headache. You get a stomachache. You're nervous over here. I fall in love. I stay over here. I'm mad. It happens here. Trust your now. That's because in Hawaiian sense, that's your kupuna talking to you. You know, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to learn, to ask for help, to seek, to walk and say, I don't know. And I think if we go with that kind of attitude, saying, I don't know, I'm here to learn. You never can go wrong. And again, the old adage, you know, you know, that knowledge isn't in just one home either. You know, and if this home don't work well, or this holiday don't work well, move on to the next one. You know, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. But you gotta, you know, it's not about just you know, listening, but you gotta hear.
Yes.
And sometimes you need to hear. And
where are some of the places that they could go, our viewers could go, to start to educate themselves and learn?
Well, I don't think, you know, having these kind of opportunities, even with these shows like this, first of all, you know, listening to these kinds of shows. I mean, you can take classes if the academic part is more. You can go to the library, pick up a book, you know, start there. I know a lot of Hawaiians start the same way. You can go and listen to lectures in the community. You can go attend a meeting. You can, you know, hook up with the schools. You know, the schools are always looking for volunteers to work on. And in the schools, it's always a wonderful place full of cultural lessons and historical lessons also there. Seek out the kupuna in your families. Talk story. But also know that there's a lot of hurt in our history.
Yes.
And so sometimes the hurt, it's a lot easier to, you know, to put your head away in the sand, or like they say, ignorance is bliss sometimes. That
to not get involved.
Yeah, because the opening of this can be hurtful, can be painful. But I definitely, like anything else, you know, no pain, no gain. Without opening up that pain, you're not really going to be able to grow and move yourself, you know, forward into a more positive direction. So, you know, start whatever is comfortable. If it's a book, if it's a history lesson, if it's watching more TV shows, but at some point they need to get active. And I always say, especially in Hawaiian, when I think of Hawaiian, not as a noun, but Hawaiian as a verb.
As a verb, yes.
Be Hawaiian.
Yes.
Not am Hawaiian,
Yeah.
but be Hawaiian.
Be Hawaiian,
Yeah.
walk Hawaiian, breathe
That's-
Hawaiian,
that's
speak
the key.
Hawaiian, live Hawaiian.
That's the key.
Just verb it.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the key.
Yes.
Yeah.
What, Kaleikoa, what got you started? We have just about 3 minutes left. What got you
I'm
started?
I'm kind of lucky. I kind of was born in this whole thing in a sense. My
You were
family,
born this
well,
way,
my
huh?
family was involved with so many land struggles when I was
Yeah.
young. So as a little boy, I have a picture of myself. I'm 7 years old, and I was involved with this Access March, I think in 1976, and I'm climbing through barbed wire fence. I'm on the front page of the Maui Sun newspaper, and that was Uncle Les Kuloi and Uncle Charlie and Maxwell and stuff. So from a young boy, I was able to. I was lucky
Yeah.
that I was there and being able to experience those kinds of things. And but I do know the greatest learning that I did really was I came to a point in my life when I just went out and said, I'm going to learn everything. I'm going to meet everybody. I'm going to be ha'a. And you sit and you listen. Because everyone's a teacher.
So you made that decision
Everyone's
for
a-
yourself.
Yeah, I came to a point, actually, when I first came to school here, I was old enough. I've always had it in me. It wasn't really until I came and walked, actually, from Maui, coming to Manoa, going to school, I really realized one day that there's so much that I want to know. And, I went off. I went off to the other islands. I stayed off with the people on Kahaka under the blue tarps. I went off to Molokai. I went off to Kauai. I went off to Kaho'olawe and just met and grew and learned,
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. We have about a minute left. Very briefly, how do you see the future of Hawaii? What does it look like to you?
I think on a short-term level, I think it's going to get a little tougher, honestly, just looking at what's happening right now. But I think in the long term, and again, there's a saying, the strongest swimmers swim in the roughest seas. And so the big wave is coming.
Mm-hmm.
So some of us, I think we got to, maybe paddle a little harder and get stronger. So I think we're going to face more crisis. This next year, next 2 years, I definitely believe you're going to see things coming up, more actions, more civil disobedience, more confrontations, and hopefully all peaceful. But definitely, it's on the rise. Definitely, it's definitely on the rise. And I think on the short term, you're going to see that curve. The state and those who and the U.S. federal government and those who occupy Hawaii, they of course they will never walk away peacefully or walk away easily.
Yes.
So we got to understand this is a long process.
Yes.
There's no easy answer.
Yeah, very
But
good.
we have to be strong enough and competent enough and committed enough to say we will. If it's a small step, we'll take that small step.
Very good. And that's where we have to leave it right there.
Okay.
Kaleikoa,
Mahalo.
thank you so much for being
Aloha.
on the show.
Aloha.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Aloha to
Mahalo.
you.
Aloha.
Mahalo. This has been Voices of Truth, one-on-one with Hawaii's Future, brought to you by the Kiwani Foundation. I'm Ehukekahu Cardwell, and until next time, ahui ho.